All right, what's going on, guys? This is my favorite time of the year, NFL Week 1 spread picks. We look at these lines all summer. It feels like an eternity, and we just wait until Week 1 comes around. Last year, I went undefeated in Week 1 plays. I'm looking to carry that over. I'm looking to run it back. I want nothing more than an undefeated Week 1 to start the season. So I'm going to give you guys my top plays. I will give you guys plays that I'm close to making but haven't got there yet, and I'll give you guys my lean. So let's get into it. To start the season off, we got Thursday night, the Detroit Lions at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Lions are plus 6.5 on the road, total sitting at 54.5 right now. I guess I would lean with the Detroit Lions just because I don't like taking Kansas City on these big spreads. We know Kansas City tends to struggle at home when they're getting these bigger numbers. It's always inflated a little bit. The books try to talk you off of taking Kansas City. And when you look at that total, it's the highest total in the Week 1 card. It's an extremely high total for both of these teams. I know both these teams score the football, but they usually get lower totals than this. For both these teams to get a total this high when they come together Week 1, it feels like a showcase game. It feels like an up-tempo game. My guy Shark, he was pretty much putting me on this side. He likes the over. And it just got me thinking, like, yeah, this is going to be two offenses that it's going to be a lot of tempo in the game, a lot of possessions. And when they get into the red zone, I expect them to get 7. So I would lean Detroit. I think I like the over a little more. Next game up, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Niners are 2.5 favorites on the road, total sitting at 40.5. Look, I respect the 49ers. I respect what they do. They're a very good road team, but I just think Tomlin at home as a home dog, it's a great spot. I think the Steelers usually play well at home. They usually play well as a home dog. They usually play well in Week 1s. And they've had some very impressive wins in Week 1, at Buffalo, at Cincinnati the last 2 years. And I know those are very different situations, but my point is they come into every season ready. They come into every season prepared. I honestly think the Pittsburgh Steelers probably have the better quarterback in this matchup, just being honest. When you look at this total, it's a low total. It tells me that the Steelers are going to play great defense, that their D-line is going to get after the 49ers' weak offensive line, and it's going to be a low-scoring game. And in that environment, I would take Pittsburgh there. So I like Pittsburgh plus the 2.5. I haven't got there yet. I probably will. I'm just upset a little bit that I didn't get it at 3, but I'll probably end up being on the Steelers in Week 1. Next game, we got the Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons. The Panthers are plus 3.5 on the road, total sitting at 40. I do like the Falcons in this game. I think that the steam that's gone up on this spread, at one point this spread was -3. I feel like it was for most of summer. It's 3.5 now. It makes sense. I had a feeling that the spread was going to rise. It makes sense to me. Frank Wright has never won a Week 1 game. He's 0-5 as a head coach in Week 1. Bryce Young, rookie quarterback. There's a lot of hype surrounding him, but at the end of the day, it's his first NFL game ever. And Desmond Ridder, look, he's not that good, so it doesn't give me confidence, but I think people think he's worse than he probably actually is, so you might get some value there. And Arthur Smith for Atlanta, he does have these guys ready to play. They did start the season off hot last year. They were covering a ton of spreads to start the year last year. So it's hard for me to fade Atlanta early in seasons, and it's hard for me to buy a Frank Wright team early in the season. So just for that, my lean is going to be Atlanta. We covered with Atlanta as a home dog last year in Week 1. This time Atlanta as a favorite in Week 1. It's a pretty strong line considering these two teams last year would basically be like a pick-em when they played each other. So Atlanta as a favorite at home in Week 1 would be the side. Haven't got there yet. Not sure if I'm going to end up all the way getting there in this one, but I would lean Atlanta. Next up, we got the Houston Texans at the Baltimore Ravens. This will be C.J. Stroud's first start. They got the coach over there, I believe, D'Amico Ryan from San Francisco. And the Baltimore Ravens are 10-point favorites at home. Lamar is back. Odell Beckham is in the building. I just think this is a huge spread for a team in Baltimore that just I don't know, they've kind of lost my trust when it comes to these big spreads. If you're talking Baltimore as an underdog, if you're talking Baltimore when everyone's forgetting about how good they are as an organization or how on point they are and how they go about their business, in those type of situations, I love Baltimore. But when Baltimore is laying like a ton of points and they're supposed to like smack down or rise to the occasion, I don't know how big I am on Baltimore in a spot like this. It's just way too many points in a Week 1 game. The Houston Texans, the coach and the quarterback, they got a lot to prove. It's just a ton of points. I think if I had to give out a play, it would be the Houston Texans, but I wouldn't touch this game. Moving on, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. The Bengals are -1.5 on the road. This is the first game that I officially took. If you have me on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok, you've seen this play already. But I like Cleveland at home. Home dogs within the division in Week 1 are 15-2 since 2012. So these home dogs, when they're playing against a team that they know, when it's in division, when they've had all summer to prep for them, they usually come out strong and they defend their home turf against, the big bad bullies in their division. And Cincinnati, they usually get off to slow starts. They lost Week 1 last year within the division to Pittsburgh. Now, that was at home, but they lost a home game to a Pittsburgh team that wasn't all that. I think Cleveland's roster is stacked. I think the only question mark is, besides Stefanski, the only question mark is Deshaun Watson. But I think if Deshaun Watson's giving you like average to competent quarterback play, I think this is a really good team. If he's giving you the old Deshaun Watson play, this is a Super Bowl team. But if he's giving you average competent play, this is a playoff team, and this is a team that should be able to defend home court and at least split the season series with the Cincinnati Bengals. This team is too good to just automatically go down 0-2 to Cincinnati in the regular season. So Joe Burrow dealing with that injury. The Cleveland Browns with a lot to prove. I do like Cleveland in this spot plus the 1.5. I think they win this game straight up. Next, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers +6 at the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings were incredible last year. I tried to fade them a million different times. Got there a few times, but most of the time it failed me. They were just covering games they had no business covering. They were winning games and closing games out in the fourth quarter, doing things that just like the ball just bounced their way. It's hard to think of a team where the ball bounced their way more than last year's Minnesota Vikings. In a lot of ways, they were similar to the Raiders last year, except the Raiders just had a bad bounce at the end of these games, and the Vikings had a good bounce at the end of these games. But for that, you guys know what I have to do. I have to continue to fade Minnesota. Eventually, they're going to turn back into their average. They're beyond due to come back and regress back to their average. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 6 points. This is still a really good defense. This is still some talented players out there on the perimeter at the wide receiver position. This is still a decent coaching staff. I mean, this is a team that's accustomed to winning. I don't think in Week 1 they just lay down just because Tom Brady's no longer there. Just because Tom Brady's no longer there, it might affect you later in the year when you start seeing, hey, we don't have a chance to make it to the playoffs. But early in the year, I think there's some value with Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield named the starter. He was great in Week 1. Like, I won't say great. He was good last year in Week 1 for Carolina. So this year, Baker, he can give you like 1 or 2 games before he flames out, before he starts, just completely messing things up. But so I think taking Baker in Week 1 against the Minnesota defense that really doesn't hold up, a really weak defense, I think this is a nice little spot situationally for Tampa. It wouldn't shock me at all if Minnesota won this game by a field goal at the very end. It wouldn't shock me if Tampa Bay won this game, but this just feels like Minnesota by 3, field goal, right at the horn. It feels like one of those games to me. So in this situation, I would lean Tampa. I haven't got there yet, but Tampa +6 is the only way I could look in this game. Next game, I'm not even going to handicap this. It's the Arizona Cardinals at the Washington Commanders. The Cardinals are +7. I don't know. I guess you would take the Cardinals because 7 points is a lot. I do like Sam Howell probably more than most. He caught my interest in the preseason game against the Ravens. He looked pretty good in that game. Ron Rivera, love-hate relationship, mostly hate. I'm not taking the Washington Commanders as a 7-point favorite. Probably at any point in this season. That's not happening. So Arizona or nothing, I guess. Next up, we got the Tennessee Titans at the New Orleans Saints. The Titans are +3, total sitting at 41.5. It feels like people are sleeping on the Titans this year. I know I'm guilty of it too a little bit. I do kind of feel like Jacksonville is going to run with this division a little bit, but I can see that happening. But at the same time, the Titans weren't able to trade Tannehill, so they're probably not going to do the whole rookie quarterback thing. They're probably just going to play this out unless they start the season really bad. Vrabel's a great coach. It's hard to fade great coaches. I'm going to be fading the Giants quite a bit this year, and it does worry me because Brian Daboll's such a good coach, and I kind of feel the same way about the Titans here. It's like Vrabel's such a good coach that you don't really want to fade the Titans because the Titans will mess around and be more motivated than the other team and be more prepared than the other team and steal a couple games that you really didn't think they had any business stealing in the first place. So Titans getting 3 right here. It looks like this line is moving. It might be 3.5. At 3.5, the only way that I could look is Tennessee. I mean, I'm not taking New Orleans with the way that Carr looked last year. A lot of that was McDaniel's fault, but with the way that Carr looked last year, I'm not going to take the Saints to cover the hook. So once that hook pops up, the only way I could look is Tennessee. I would lean Tennessee. At 3, I would even lean Tennessee, but to touch this game, I probably would at least need the hook. Next game, this is a really interesting one. The Jacksonville Jaguars, 4.5-point favorites at the Indianapolis Colts. Look, guys, there's only one way I could look in this game. It's the Colts. Colts plus 4.5. Like I said, home dogs within the division, 15-2 since 2012. This is just really ugly, really nasty, but Anthony Richardson, he can make a ton of plays. I know it's a rookie head coach with a rookie quarterback, but Anthony Richardson can make a ton of plays. Very athletic kid. The Colts still have a good roster surrounding them. Jacksonville, this is your typical case, where you have this team that exceeds expectations last year, looks good, and then coming into this year, there's even more hype on them, and now all of a sudden their lines are inflated. This is a line that Vegas is putting out where they're just like, hey, we can tax the public on the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Colts because we know the public wants to take Jacksonville. So we're just going to tax this line. We're going to inflate this line. This line should probably be like, 3 at max? 3 at max is what this line could be. Jacksonville, if they win by a field goal, you push. Like 3 at max, maybe 3.5. At 4.5, it's like, wow, they're daring you. They're daring you to take the Colts, and yeah, home teams within the division in this spot, they just play pretty well, and I just know a stinky line when I see one. And last year I took a ton of games like this in week 1. I took the Colts. Actually, I took the Texans plus 8 in week 1 last year against the Colts, and everyone thought I was crazy. And the Texans, they tied. It was 20-20, I believe, so they covered the plus 8. So, for me, I just know when a line stinks, and this line stinks. I haven't took the Colts yet officially, but I'm getting pretty close. Next game, we got the Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are 4.5-point favorites. Look, the Seahawks have a great roster, but I'm not really sure if I want to buy into the Seahawks as like covering home favorite big lines yet. I don't really know how I feel about that. The Los Angeles Rams tend to play well against the Seahawks. They tend to kind of own them. That's how the NFC West works. There's always like one team in that division that owns the other team, and it like circles around. McVay has fared pretty well against Pete Carroll. I wouldn't fade the Rams in this spot. It's just kind of like, it's the Seahawks are similar to Jacksonville where it's like they've been hyped up and people saw them have success last year, so the narrative has changed on the team, and now Vegas is going to tax you a little bit to take them. And then on top of that, it's like everyone hates the Rams and the Rams suck now, so you're not going to buy into that. But the Rams have had success against the Seahawks, so it's hard for me to really, it's conflicting. The trends, the line, the matchup, they all conflict with each other. This is a very tough game. Free play, I would say, the Los Angeles Rams, but don't take my word for it. This is a nasty game for me. Next game, we got the Philadelphia Eagles at the New England Patriots. The Patriots are 4.5-point dogs. It may climb up to being 5-point dogs. I think it was 5. It might have been 5.5 at one point in the summer. It was definitely 5, though. New England at home in this spot. Look, I don't think New England wins this game, so that's why I have a hard time taking the spread, because I can see New England losing by a field goal. But I do think New England covers. I think Philadelphia, they're stacked. Jalen Hurts is a guy you can trust. I think Philadelphia will come through ready to play. But losing your offensive and defensive coordinator, having to go at Belichick in week one, Jalen Hurts having to, stand up to the challenge and hold and show that he really is that guy. It's tough. Like, this is a tough matchup for the Eagles. Not only is it going to be tough for them to win, but it's going to be tough for them to win by a margin. Once you get at -4.5, you're basically saying you think the Eagles are going to win by a touchdown. I mean, more or less, you're getting into that dead zone territory. And I just think, the Patriots should be able to keep this close. Belichick, they should have the coaching advantage. The defense should be really good. The Patriots do have a competent offensive line, and I think maybe, hopefully this summer with the new OC, they've been finding ways to get it out of Mac Jones' hands quicker. They're going to run more play action this year. Different plays that Mac Jones is more comfortable with, because last year, Matt Patricia was just doing a bunch of stuff that Mac Jones wouldn't normally do. Things that he doesn't feel super comfortable with. So I do think the Patriots cover this game. But because I'm not sure if the Patriots can really win this game or not, I'm not sure if I'm going to all the way get there. But the Patriots +4.5 is the only side you could look here. Not to mention, the Super Bowl hangover when a team loses the Super Bowl and then the next year. I'm sure there's some amazing trends to fade a team after that. So, the Patriots are the only way you could look here. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders +4 at the Denver Broncos, total sitting at 44. And the Raiders have owned the Broncos in previous memory. In the last 10 matchups, they're like 8-2 straight up, 9-1 ATS, something like that. I mean, the Raiders have completely dominated the Broncos. Josh McDaniels' former team, he beat the Broncos twice last year. That's like the only good thing McDaniels did last year. Jimmy G, he's going to have to show and prove that he can ball still. There's a lot of pressure on Sean Payton and Russell Wilson to figure this thing out, to, right the wrongs of this team from last year and turn this ship around. And I think the Raiders are just, they're free rolling into Denver, a place where they've had a lot of success, a place where they're very comfortable, and they're just going to give it their best shot. And I do think McDaniels, as bad as he can be at times, I do think he's a very good play caller. So it wouldn't surprise me if he just drew up a really good game plan in week one for Jimmy G to follow. I mean, he's coached Jimmy G before, so there is some familiarity right there. So the only way I could look in this spot is the Raiders +4. But with Sean Payton coming there, Denver is eventually due to start coming around and competing better against the Raiders and winning some games against the Raiders. I just don't know if it happens in week one. I don't know if Sean Payton is really going to make his full mark on this franchise by week one. I'm thinking maybe the Raiders get them here, and maybe the Raiders win outright, and then you have later in the season when they face each other again, Sean Payton by then, he has his fingerprints on this team, and they're able to take care of business against like a weaker division opponent. So that's kind of how I see it. I see them splitting the season series. Raiders +4 is the only way I could look. I haven't got there yet, but I do feel kind of good about it. The only way I could look in this game is the Raiders. All right, guys, in last 4 games, we got the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears. The Packers are +1.5 on the road. I've already taken this game officially. I am on the Chicago Bears. I put a video with the in-depth analysis on all my platforms, but just to give you guys the quick rundown right here, anytime you see a team like Green Bay that's just dominated Chicago for so long, I mean, they're 7-0 last 7 against Chicago. In all 7 games, they were favored, and they covered all 7 of those games. So they're winning, and they're winning by margin. But then you start going through the box score and going through, the scoring drives, and you start realizing, like, oh, dang, Chicago recently has kind of melted some of these games away, or Chicago actually should have won the last couple, and the line just keeps getting shorter. And Green Bay used to be 7-point favorites against them, or 10-point favorites. Now they're 4-point favorites. Now they're 2-point favorites. All of a sudden, now you see Green Bay as a dog, and it's like, times have changed. Aaron Rodgers is no longer there. Justin Fields, now Chicago has the quarterback advantage. Justin Fields has actually gotten reps in before Jordan Love is going to be thrown into the fire against a team that's hungry to defeat them for the first time in a long time. And it's just a lot to ask for. He's basically going to pay for the sins of Aaron Rodgers in a way. Aaron Rodgers has been just beating up on Chicago for so long. He told them that he owns them. And now, the Bills do, and Chicago's coming back. Chicago came back with their big brother. Chicago came back, ready to get after it, and Aaron Rodgers isn't there anymore. So Jordan Love's going to take the beating. Chicago, after the bye week last year, they were playing amazing football. That game Monday night against the Patriots, I think that's when we all saw that, hey, Jordan Love has some shit to him. So give me Chicago in this game. Short home favorite. They should finally get there against Green Bay. I wouldn't be surprised if this game got a little ugly. I wouldn't be surprised if Green Bay struggled to score. Justin Fields makes some dynamic plays. Give me the Bears -1.5. Next up, and this is a game that, I might end up getting there. I haven't got there yet, but the Miami Dolphins +2.5 at the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers, they're a pretty interesting look here. The line looks like it's going to jump back up to 3. Chargers -2.5, Chargers -3. It's an interesting look. It's a high total. These are two teams. They played each other last year. The Chargers got them on Sunday night. The Chargers obviously have the quarterback edge. The Chargers, Sharps love the Chargers this year. This is a year for the Chargers where they're kind of being slept on. They have a lot of talent on both sides. It's kind of a make it or break it year for them. Unless you believe that Sean Payton's just going to turn the Denver Broncos into instant contenders, you're pretty much looking at the Chargers and saying, hey, this is your division to be second place in. Why not be second place in this division? Why not, if the Kansas City Chiefs take a little step back, if their roster isn't as good this year, why not just be second in your division and maybe even challenge for first? Put a little pressure on the Chiefs' back, and even if the Chiefs finish first in the division, they probably will, you can at least finish as a close second and really show your dominance in the AFC. I think the Chargers have a schedule. When I looked at it earlier, their win total sitting at 9.5. It feels like a 10-win team. Last year they were a 10-win team. It feels like a 10-win team again this year. Wouldn't shock me if they got 11 wins. This line, when you're getting -2.5, -3 against the Dolphins team that everybody loves, I just think people are going to easily pick the Dolphins, thinking like, oh, the Dolphins are really good, and these teams are kind of on the same level, and the Chargers always choke, and the Dolphins, I'm getting points, and they're talented. I just think we all have to remember that the Chargers covered Week 1 last year. It was against the Raiders, and the line was 3.5. But people had high expectations for the Raiders last year. I didn't, but we cashed with the Chargers last year in Week 1, that -3.5. I think right here, -2.5, -3. I do think the Chargers can get there again. Kellen Moore, I believe his name is Kellen Moore, the OC for the Chargers now, the new OC. When he was in Dallas, I don't know if you guys remember, but his first game as the OC, they played at Tampa Bay on ring night on a Thursday night when Brady got his ring, and he was pitching a perfect game. I mean, the plays that he was calling, Dak was dialing it up. Like, they were dialing it up. Dak was killing them. Like, I could just see Kellen Moore first game just like being a showcase where him and Justin Herbert, they got a lot of great plays lined up, and he's probably just excited with the new toy that he has in Herbert with that arm talent. So give me the Chargers here. I haven't got there yet, but the only way I could look in this game is Los Angeles. Sunday Night Football, we got the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Giants. The Giants are +3.5 at home. Like I said, home teams within the division in Week 1. This is a great spot for them. Brian Daboll having this team lined up, having this team prepared. I do have, low expectations for the Giants this year. I don't think the Giants are going to be very good. I think the Cowboys are going to be very good. The Cowboys tend to struggle in Week 1 of the NFL season. The Giants did cover last year on the road. They won outright. Different environment, but, Week 1 stuff. This is an interesting game. It's another game where I feel like the Cowboys probably win, but the Giants have a shot to win, and the Giants should cover. Like, having that hook in this game is a big deal. That 3.5, that 3.5 is tough. It's hard for me to fade that. I definitely couldn't take the Cowboys -3.5. At 3, I wouldn't touch this game. Under a field goal, you could start looking at the Cowboys, but at 3, I wouldn't touch this game, and at 3.5, the only way you can look is the Giants. I'm low on the Giants this year. I think maybe the Giants win and cover this game and then lose the next couple games. Or maybe they cover this game but they lose, and it's just the start of them losing games this year. So, free lean to the Giants +3.5. And last game up, we got the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football at the New York Jets. The Jets, of course, with Aaron Rodgers now, this line has bumped up to 2.5. The Jets are home dogs. At first, I really did like the New York Jets. I did think, hey, Rodgers, Hard Knocks, there's just good vibes in the facility. There's a lot of good energy where Tom Brady might have to get some reps and take his time to get acclimated to Tampa Bay because he plays the quarterback position so much on pre-snap, the read, and Brady is insanely talented, but a lot of it is like IQ and in the head and stuff like that. Where Aaron Rodgers, he's just immensely talented. He's a genius too, but a lot of it with Aaron Rodgers is just being extremely talented. So that's where I'm like, well, maybe Brady takes his time to get acclimated, but Rodgers can just jump into it and ball out right away. Good vibes. So I was kind of on board with the Jets just off that, but the Bills, it's like they're getting so much hate from the media, and the Diggs situation is blowing up so much. And I think there's merit to it. I do think the Allen-Diggs relationship is probably, damaged a little bit, but I don't know. It's like a little bit too much noise. It's like a little bit too much good noise coming out of New York and then, out of the Jets, and then bad noise coming out of Buffalo, And I don't know if these are media narratives or whatnot. And I do know Buffalo, as bad as the defense looked against the Bengals, and I know that's all anybody's thinking about is how bad Buffalo looked last year to close out the year. Their defense was really good in the regular season, and hearing all these reports about how bad the Jets' offensive line is, and Rodgers is older, and Rodgers, he's just going to throw the ball away, or he's just going to, get rid of it. He's not going to take the sack or extend the plays too much anymore. So hearing that the Jets' offensive line is really struggling and people sleeping on the Bills' defense, that kind of worries me. So at this point, I can't really touch this game. Just for the little fairy tale narrative stuff that I was talking, maybe I'd lean the Jets here with the 2.5, hoping that there is big time drama in Buffalo. But I wouldn't touch this game with a 10-foot pole. If you caught me early in the summer when this line first dropped, I would have told you the Jets at the 1.5, at plus 1.5. But now I can't really touch this game, guys. So best of luck to you all. Those are my week one, my top plays. I give you guys a couple officials I locked in. The Cleveland Browns plus the 1.5. The Chicago Bears minus the 1.5. And, there's other games like the Steelers that I'm looking at. So best of luck to you guys. And, let's crush week one. Make sure to like, comment, share the videos. I'll be posting these videos every single week. Week 2 spreads, week 3 spreads. I'll try to get them up as soon as possible early in the week so you guys can bounce ideas back and forth with me. Make sure to check me out on the social media platforms. I'll drop the links below in the bio. Until next time, peace.